You're not afraid of lies. You're afraid you'll never know the truth. Morning. Before you even open your eyes, your hand reaches for your phone. Newsfeed. Scrolling. Stopping. A headline screams about a crisis, a catastrophe, a threat. Your heart skips a beat. But is this true? Can you believe it? What if it's manipulation? Fake. You scroll further, looking for confirmation or refutation. And there it is, the opposite news. Now you have two contradictory versions. Which one is true? Both? Neither? You continue your day with this invisible burden of uncertainty. And in the evening, you check again. What has changed? Who was right? There is no answer. Only anxiety remains. Familiar feeling? You're not alone. We live in a unique time, the era of post-truth, a term that became Oxford Dictionary's word of the year back in 2016, but has only now reached catastrophic proportions. Post-truth is a condition where objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. Think about it. We've stopped perceiving truth as something absolute. Truth has become relative, situational, convenient. My truth, your truth, their truth. And everyone believes in their own version of reality, cocooning themselves in an information bubble. American philosopher Harry Frankfurt wrote in his essay On Bullshit that the most frightening thing is not the lie itself, but indifference to truth. When we're not interested in what's really happening, when we're not looking for truth, but confirmation of our own biases. And now this indifference to truth is generating a special kind of anxiety. Fake anxiety, uncertainty anxiety, fear of being deceived, suspicion toward any source of information. You read news and think, what if this isn't true? What if someone is trying to deceive me? What if I'm deceiving myself by believing what I want to believe? And this endless stream of unanswered questions creates a background noise of anxiety that never disappears. Imagine this. You're standing on the side of a road in thick fog. You need to cross to the other side, but you can't see if cars are coming. You try to listen for sounds, but you only hear a distant hum. What do? Risk it and go? Or stay in place, perhaps forever? This is how we feel every day consuming information in the post-truth era. We're always in fog. And this isn't just a metaphor. Psychologists at Cambridge University found that constant uncertainty about the reliability of information activates the same areas of the brain responsible for processing physical threats. The simple formula of fake anxiety: information overload plus contradictory data, plus absence of reliable sources, chronic information stress. Humans are evolutionarily not equipped to process such amounts of contradictory information. Our brain seeks patterns, strives for cognitive consistency, and when faced with chaos of contradictory messages, it feels the same as during real danger. Cortisol is released, the stress hormone. Anxiety increases. The ability for analytical thinking decreases. A vicious cycle emerges. Information chaos generates anxiety, and anxiety reduces our ability to navigate information chaos. Marianne, 34, marketing specialist. I stopped watching news before bed. But in the morning, I still check my feed first thing. And I often feel like I'm being fooled. I compare headlines from different publications and realize they cover the same event in completely different ways. And this paralyzes me. I don't know who to believe, so I don't believe anyone. But I need some way to navigate the world. Alexander, 45, history teacher. I used to simply relay facts from textbooks to students. Now each lesson turns into a discussion about sources. How do we know this? The children ask. And I don't always have an answer. How do you teach historical facts in a world where the very concept of fact has become blurred? Sophia, 28, new mother. When my baby was born, I started looking for information about vaccination, and I drowned in contradictions. Some experts say one thing, others say the opposite. I spent several sleepless nights trying to figure out who's right, and eventually made a decision, but I'm still not sure if it's the right one. Recognize yourself? And the worst part is that we don't even realize how deeply this fake anxiety affects our daily lives. It manifests in procrastination in decision-making. I don't have enough reliable information, so I'd better wait. Excessive fact-checking. You read the same news on 10 different resources, trying to understand where the truth lies. Information bulimia. Relentless consumption of news, even when you realize it harms your mental health. Cognitive time pressure. The feeling that even spending all your time analyzing information, you still can't separate truth from lies. Emotional exhaustion. Constant feeling of anxiety, irritation, helplessness. Modern psychologists already talk about a new form of anxiety disorder, information anxiety. And this isn't just an invented problem. It's a real condition affecting our quality of life, our decisions, our relationships. Doubt is not a pleasant state, but certainty is an absurd one. Voltaire. But is doubt always bad? The philosophical tradition of skepticism has a long history, from Socrates with his "I know that I know nothing" to René Descartes with his methodical doubt. Doubt was a tool for knowledge, not an obstacle to it. The problem of our time is not that we doubt, but how we doubt. Descartes doubted methodically to arrive at irrefutable truths. We doubt chaotically, without direction, without hope of finding solid ground beneath our feet. Contemporary philosopher Slavoj Žižek says, "The problem is not that people don't believe in anything, but that they believe in everything." Paradoxically, in the post-truth era, we become simultaneously too trusting and too suspicious. We absolutely believe sources that confirm our biases, and absolutely distrust those that contradict them. German sociologist Ulrich Beck described in the 90s the concept of a risk society, a social order where the production of risks prevails over the production of wealth. Today, we live in an information risk society where the main threat is not the information itself, but our inability to correctly evaluate and interpret it. Imagine wandering a labyrinth where each turn leads to a new, even more confusing path. This is exactly how our brain works when trying to make sense of contradictory information. And in this labyrinth, there are hidden traps, cognitive biases that prevent us from finding the way out. Confirmation bias. We seek out and better remember information that confirms our existing views. Real-life situation. Peter is convinced that a certain political party is corrupt. He happily reads all news about corruption scandals related to this party and skips any positive mentions of it. Gradually, his confidence in the party's corruption only grows, although the objective picture may be much more complex. Hostile media effect. We perceive media as biased against our position, even if they're neutral. Example: Ellen supports the environmental movement. When she watches a report on eco-activist protests where journalists simply present different perspectives, she's sure the media deliberately portrays eco-activists negatively. Meanwhile, supporters of industrial companies watching the same report believe journalists sympathize with eco-activists. Third-person effect. We believe media influences other people more than ourselves. Example: Of course, I understand when someone tries to manipulate me through news, but other people, especially older people, less educated, with different political views, underline as appropriate, they definitely fall prey to propaganda. Familiar? Mere exposure effect. The more often we encounter information, the more likely we are to consider it true, regardless of actual accuracy. Example: Ivan sees messages on various resources every day about a certain product causing cancer. Although there's no scientific evidence for this, the mere frequency of repetition of this information makes him believe in its truth. Availability heuristic. We overestimate the probability of events we hear about often or can easily imagine. Example: After a series of reports on terrorist acts, Marina is afraid to fly, although statistically it's a safer way to travel than by car, which she uses daily without fear. These cognitive traps aren't a choice, but a feature of how our brains work. They operate automatically, at the subconscious level, and that's why they're so difficult to fight. But the first step to overcoming any trap is acknowledging its existence. In the post-truth era, Disinformation isn't just mistakes or casual lies. It's a high-tech industry with its own methods, strategies, and goals. Familiar with the term information operations? These are targeted campaigns to spread and promote certain narratives to achieve a specific goal, political, economic, military, and a whole arsenal of techniques is used for this. Fabrication, creating completely fictional content presented as real. Example, publishing fabricated documents or fake scientific studies that are then cited as credible sources. Manipulation, distorting real facts through selective presentation, removing context, manipulative headlines. Example, using a real photograph from another event or time to illustrate current news. Saturation, oversaturating the information space with contradictory data to create an effect of information noise. Example, simultaneously launching dozens of different, often opposing versions of one event to confuse the audience and undermine trust in any version. Polarization, strengthening social divisions, presenting complex issues as a simple choice between two extremes. Example, presenting any political discussion as a conflict between absolutely good and absolutely bad sides without acknowledging nuances and complexities. Discreditation, purposefully undermining the authority of independent information sources and experts. Example, mass campaigns to undermine trust in scientific institutions, media, the judicial system. The most effective propaganda is one you don't notice, wrote American media researcher Noam Chomsky. And today, manipulation technologies have become so sophisticated that we often don't realize when we become their victims. But the scariest thing isn't this. The scariest thing is that we begin to doubt even reliable information, like in the tale of the shepherd who cried, "Wolf." When the wolf really appeared, no one believed anymore. And this creates a new paradox. Excessive distrust becomes as harmful as excessive credulity. What happens in your brain when you face information uncertainty? Imagine you're checking your news feed and see a threatening headline. In your brain, the amygdala activates, a primitive structure responsible for the fight or flight reaction. Adrenaline is released, heart rate increases, cortisol levels rise, the stress hormone. But, unlike a real physical threat, an information threat doesn't give you the option to either fight or flee. You're stuck in a state of constant readiness for danger that never fully materializes, but never disappears either. Neurobiologists at the University of California discovered that uncertainty activates the prefrontal cortex, the brain area responsible for decision-making. But when uncertainty becomes chronic, this area overloads. A so-called cognitive paralysis occurs, inability to make decisions due to excess contradictory information. Our nervous system, evolutionarily, isn't adapted to such a level of information uncertainty. We can face physical threats, but our brain doesn't know how to react to information threats. Studies show that people who regularly consume contradictory news have higher cortisol levels even at rest. Prolonged exposure to information stress can lead to real physiological consequences: sleep disturbances, decreased immunity, increased risk of cardiovascular diseases. According to neuropsychologist Robert Sapolsky, chronic stress caused by information overload can be as harmful to the body as physical stressors. Post-truth doesn't mean the end of truth. It means the multiplicity of truths, wrote sociologist Zygmunt Bauman. But when truths become too many, doesn't our healthy suspicion turn into clinical paranoia? Researchers at the Oxford Internet Institute discovered an interesting pattern. People who systematically consume contradictory information over time demonstrate symptoms similar to paranoid disorders. They begin to see hidden motives in neutral actions, believe in the existence of global conspiracies, feel that everyone lies, constantly search for the real truth behind official statements. This paranoid psychology manifests not only in attitudes toward news, but extends to interpersonal relationships. People begin to distrust close ones, colleagues, experts. Any statement is perceived with suspicion, any action as having a hidden purpose. And this destroys the social fabric. Sociologist Robert Putnam calls this the erosion of social capital, a decrease in the level of trust that unites society. But the scariest thing is that this distrust leads to apathy and alienation. If everyone lies and there is no truth, then what's the difference? Such a fatalistic mood becomes increasingly common. A young woman in a therapy session. I stopped reading news, stopped voting, stopped expressing my opinion because I'm not sure if it's really my opinion or if it was imposed on me. I just exist day to day, not thinking about the future. This apathy is even more dangerous than paranoia, because a person overcome with paranoia is at least still searching for truth. An apathetic person gives up even the search. It's impossible to talk about information anxiety without mentioning social media, these powerful accelerators for spreading both information and disinformation. Social media algorithms work on the principle of maximizing engagement. And what causes the most emotional engagement? Content that evokes strong emotions: outrage, fear, anger, shock. An MIT study showed that fake news spreads on Twitter, now X, 70% faster than true news. Why? Because it's usually more shocking, unexpected, emotionally charged. Additionally, social media creates the effect of information bubbles, when algorithms show us predominantly content that matches our existing preferences and views. This reinforces confirmation bias and polarizes society. A programmer who worked on content personalization algorithms for a major social network confesses, "We created a system optimized to show people what they already agree with. This maximizes the time they spend on the platform, but minimizes their ability to see alternative viewpoints." And the worst part is that social media blurs the line between verified information sources and random posts. All messages look the same in the feed. A post by a professional journalist with 20 years of experience has the same format as a post by a random user who might deliberately spread false information. According to a Pew Research Center study, about 68% of American adults get news from social media, but only 57% of them check the source of this news. And this creates the perfect environment for disinformation to thrive and fake anxiety to spread. If we can't change the information environment, we can change our attitude toward it. And this is where media literacy comes to help, the skill of critically consuming and analyzing information. Here are a few practical tips for daily information self-defense. 1. Check the information source. Who is the author of the message? What is the publication's reputation? Does the source have a conflict of interest regarding this topic? Example: you're reading an article about the harms of smoking. Check who wrote it. If it's a representative of a tobacco company, the reason for increased criticism is obvious. 2. Look for primary sources. Does the author reference specific studies, documents, statistics? Can you find these primary sources? Are the data from primary sources correctly interpreted? Example: news claims that, according to research by University X, product Y causes cancer. Try to find the actual study and check if it really talks about a causal relationship, not just correlation. 3. Distinguish facts from judgments. Facts can be verified; they are either true or false. Judgments reflect someone's opinion, attitude, interpretation. Learn to extract the factual basis from emotional evaluation. Example: politician X passed a corrupt law that will destroy our economy. This is a judgment. The only fact here is, politician X passed law Y. Everything else is evaluative judgments. 4. Pay attention to emotional reaction. If news evokes strong emotions, especially anger or fear, that's a reason for increased caution. Ask yourself, why does this information cause such a reaction in me? Are they trying to manipulate me? Give yourself time to cool down before sharing emotionally charged information. Example: you see a shocking post about a terrible act by a politician you don't support. Stop. Check the facts. Perhaps this emotional reaction is precisely the goal of manipulators. 5. Practice information diet. Limit the time you spend consuming news. Choose quality sources over quantity. Establish information detox days. Periods without news and social media. Real-life example: Journalist Rolf Dobelli completely gave up news more than 10 years ago and claims it has made him happier, a deeper thinker, and more productive. Developing media literacy isn't a one-time action but a daily practice. It's like a muscle that needs training, and the more you train it, the easier it becomes to recognize disinformation. Media literacy helps filter out obvious disinformation, but doesn't save us from the fundamental uncertainty of our time. The truth is that sometimes we simply cannot know for sure what is true. How to live with this? How to build your life on the shaky ground of information uncertainty? This is where the concept of psychological resilience comes to help, the ability to function and develop despite stressful circumstances. Strategies for developing psychological resilience in the post-truth era. 1. Accept uncertainty as part of reality. Psychotherapist Irvin Yalom asserts that accepting uncertainty is a key step to psychological health. Uncertainty isn't a temporary state to overcome. It's a fundamental condition of our existence. When I stopped demanding absolute certainty from the world, I felt a strange relief, says Irene Forty, psychologist. I realized I could live, make decisions, and be happy even without knowing everything for sure. 2. Develop tolerance for uncertainty. According to psychologists, people differ in their natural tolerance for uncertainty. But the good news, this quality can be developed. Practical exercise. Start small. Try spending a day without a plan, or try a new dish without reading reviews. Gradually expand your comfort zone under conditions of uncertainty. 3. Find islands of certainty. Even in a sea of uncertainty, you can find something reliable and stable. This could be your values, close relationships, professional skills. When I feel lost in information chaos, I return to my fundamental values, says Andrew, 52, professor. True or not, but I know that honesty, compassion, and justice are important to me, and this helps me navigate. 4. Develop critical thinking at the skill level. Critical thinking isn't just skeptical attitude toward information. It's a set of specific skills, analyzing arguments, recognizing logical fallacies, evaluating evidence. Practical exercise. Choose a controversial topic and try to write down all arguments for and against. For each argument, evaluate the quality of evidence. This will help you develop a habit of objective analysis. 5. Practice information mindfulness. Just as mindfulness practice helps us become aware of our thoughts and emotions, the practice of information mindfulness helps us become aware of how we consume information. Practical exercise. Before opening your news feed, ask yourself, what am I looking for right now? Information, entertainment, confirmation of my views? This will help you consume information consciously rather than automatically. The problem of post-truth and information anxiety isn't limited to individual psychology. It's a collective problem requiring collective solutions. It's not enough to just protect yourself from disinformation. We're also responsible for not spreading it further. Ethics of information sharing. 1. Verify before sharing. The 30-second rule. Spend 30 seconds checking information before sharing it. This can be minimal source verification, searching for confirmations from other sources, or just a moment of pause to ask yourself, is this really true? I made a rule for myself, not to repost emotional news immediately, says Victor, 36, marketer. If news evokes a strong reaction in me, I wait an hour, and often it turns out the news was either exaggerated or completely untrue. 2. Don't be an unwitting agent of disinformation. Even if you disagree with certain information and share it with criticism, you're still increasing its reach. Studies show that rebuttals are often less effective than the disinformation itself. 3. Support quality journalism. Financially support independent media that adhere to quality journalism standards. Paid subscriptions, donations, even just a disabled ad blocker on such media sites. All this helps them survive in a challenging economic environment. 4. Create demand for quality information. Social media algorithms show us what generates the most engagement. If we engage with quality content, like comment, share, we create demand for similar content. 5. Be a responsible content creator. In the digital age, each of us is a potential content creator. Even if you run a small blog or just write comments, you influence the information environment. We need to understand that the information environment is a common resource, like air or water, says media researcher Daniela Brody. And just as we're responsible for the cleanliness of the environmental environment, we're responsible for the cleanliness of the information one. The information crisis we're experiencing isn't static. It constantly evolves, fueled by new technologies. Artificial intelligence creates new challenges for recognizing disinformation. Deepfake videos, AI-generated texts, photorealistic images of non-existent events, distinguishing truth from fiction becomes increasingly difficult. Studies show that even digital media experts correctly identify deepfake videos only 65% of the time. For average users, this figure is even lower, about 57%. We're entering an era where our eyes and ears can no longer be reliable witnesses, warns digital security expert Alex Salayev. A video of a person saying certain words is no longer proof that this person actually said those words. But technology isn't just the problem, it's also part of the solution. New content verification tools, blockchain technologies for authentication, specialized AI systems for detecting disinformation, all this can help us better navigate the information space. Can we apply these tools faster than disinformation technologies develop? That's an open question. But one thing can be said for certain: the future of truth depends not only on technologies, but also on human values, critical thinking, and collective responsibility. I want to share my own story because fake anxiety isn't an abstract concept for me. It's something I've personally gone through. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I found myself in a real information crisis. Every day brought new data, new recommendations, new theories, and everything contradicted each other. Masks are effective. Masks are ineffective. The virus transmits through air droplets. No, it transmits through surfaces. No, actually through air droplets. I started checking news hourly, searched for information on hundreds of resources, compared data from different countries, studied scientific research, although I had no medical education. And the more information I consumed, the more anxious I became. I experienced panic attacks, couldn't sleep, constantly played worst-case scenarios in my head. Eventually, my friend, a psychotherapist, literally prescribed me an information diet. No more than 30 minutes of news per day, only from verified sources, no social media before bed. At first it was difficult. I experienced real withdrawal symptoms. Anxiety. What if I miss something important? Anger. Why can others read news but not me? Helplessness. How can I protect myself if I don't know everything? But gradually I began to recover. Anxiety decreased. I started sleeping better. And, most amazingly, I began making better decisions about my own safety. Because when you consume less information but of higher quality, you process it better. You can distinguish signal from noise. Today, I don't completely isolate myself from news, but I've learned to consume information mindfully. I've developed my own information self-defense strategy, and this has restored the inner peace I so needed. Truth is not what you can prove. Truth is what you cannot hide from, wrote Brazilian writer Paulo Coelho. We live in an era when absolute truth seems unattainable, when any fact can be questioned, when any source may prove unreliable. But this doesn't mean we should abandon the search for truth. On the contrary, right now, this search becomes most important. Psychologist Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of concentration camps, wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Between the information we receive and the decisions we make, there is also a space. Space for critical thinking, space for doubt, space for deeper analysis. Our task isn't to find absolute truth in the post-truth era. Our task is to learn to live with uncertainty without losing the ability for rational thinking, empathy, and action." Information anxiety isn't just a personal problem. It's a symptom of a deeper social crisis, a crisis of trust, a crisis of shared values, a crisis of common understanding of reality. And resolving this crisis requires both individual efforts to develop media literacy and psychological resilience, and collective efforts to restore reliable information institutions and a common information space. So what should you do, here and now, in front of this screen? First, acknowledge your information anxiety. It's real, it's justified, and you're not alone facing it. Second, start consciously shaping your information habits. Quality is more important than quantity. Depth is more important than speed. Understanding is more important than mere knowledge. Third, remember your responsibility in the shared information space. Every time you share information, you influence this space. Do it consciously. And finally, don't let information chaos paralyze you. Even in a world without absolute truth, we can and must make decisions, act, create change. Because, as Albert Camus said, in the midst of winter I found there was, within me, an invincible summer. Even in the darkest time of information, uncertainty, we have an inner compass, our values, our minds, our humanity. And no disinformation can take that away from us. So now my question to you: what information habit increases your anxiety the most? And which habit are you ready to give up today? Write in the comments. The greatest wisdom of our time is not the search for ultimate truth, but the ability to live meaningfully in a world of multiple truths. Zygmunt Bauman.